Uh, I believe this is the first time we've ever done a sequel to one of our more successful
We're
segments.
calling it a
Maybe it's not
sequel.
a direct sequel, but it's a spiritual sequel.
Yes.
Because we
Yes, it
look
is.
at a certain team in the NFL and we look at their quarterback battle going into training camp and we say, "Uh-oh, that doesn't seem too fun."
Smells
Last year it
all
was
too
Baker Mayfield.
familiar.
Yeah, last year was Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, which was the first video that ever really got any sort of traction
Oh,
on
yeah.
our channel. People love the Trask talk.
I was gonna,
Um,
yeah. So we're
yeah,
bringing it back.
but oh yeah,
Trask talk,
and that
baby.
we love the Trask talk.
Oh, yeah.
We'll
What's
spit
Kyle
out like a
Trask doing
20
these
minute
days?
segment on Kyle Trask.
Yes, we should do that.
I'm sure he's making that backup money. I'm sure
Oh,
he's
that's
doing
true.
just
Is he still?
fine.
He's still in the Bucks.
Um, I would be shocked if he wasn't.
Yeah.
Um, But either
Anyway,
way, Baker Mayfield eventually won that QB battle, but quite significantly. Ended up having a fantastic season, making it to the Pro Bowl, I believe. I don't have time to fact check that.
I think so.
Um,
He either
but
made it or
I'm
he
pretty
was
sure he did.
very, very close.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he made it to the Pro Bowl. Um, Either way, the big conversation now is in terms of quarterback battle, it looks really iffy. Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell on the Raiders. Because the Raiders were in a very interesting situation leading up to the draft, where you think they're probably going to take a quarterback at 13, most likely Michael Penix, until the Falcons say, "Uh-oh, you're not doing that because we have some weirdo shit to do." Um, so not only the Raiders don't get a quarterback, they also not only don't get Penix, but they don't get a chance to draft any quarterbacks at all. With the Broncos taking Bo Nix at 6, and then the top 6 quarterbacks are gone before the Raiders even have a chance to pick. They end up going with Brock Bowers. So this is a spot where many people thought that there was going to be a quarterback. Like when people saw the Raiders sign Minshew, it's like, oh, it's going to be a backup to whoever they bring in. But now it's actually looking like the battle coming out of camp is between last year's starter Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. And in fact, there was a recent quote by Las Vegas's assistant GM Champ Kelly who said, quote, "The work that Aiden did last season towards the end of last year, we're excited about his growth and what he's going to be able to do going into year 2, but also excited about his competition. It's going to be a really good competition." Now, it's interesting. Um, Aiden O'Connell, I think, did better than you could expect out of a 4th, 5th round pick, whatever he was.
Yeah.
But there's a reason people didn't expect this to be the competition. Um, do you think any of these guys, either of these guys, Minshew or O'Connell, has a chance to have that kind of Baker Mayfield breakout year where we'll look back at the segment and say like, oh man, this was more obvious than we thought?
Well, and this would have been a really, really good segment, I think, looking back on it a little bit, to have Josh on, because I would have been curious to hear his opinion
Yeah.
on it. As somebody who I
Yeah.
believe, I'm pretty sure Josh watched most of the Raiders games last year, and just the as a fan's opinion of Aiden O'Connell potentially being the starter of the future now, you're pretty much saying that. Him or Minshew, right? Maybe not Minshew, maybe not the future. But if Aiden O'Connell really, really has like a breakout year this season, you got to think he's your guy, right? I I think the eyes should be on O'Connell more than Minshew. I think you
Mm-hmm.
really, really gotta hope that O'Connell blossoms under the pressure here a little bit, because at times I know a lot of Raiders fans were pretty high on him, potentially being their next big guy, and I think this is his, in a sense, really his last real chance, because we know you know what you're going to get out of Minshew at this point. There's not really a lot of doubt. We
Yep,
know what
that's
the
fair.
ceiling is, and we know what the floor is with Minshew. And I think that if the Raiders want Minshew to be their starter for their mediocre team for the next couple of years, he can be. And he's not going to have much issue with that. I think he'll give the Raiders enough reason to give him a mediocre contract. And yeah, I think he's going to be fine here. I do think out of the two, Aiden O'Connell is the one player who's we haven't seen the ceiling of, and he is the guy who a lot of Raiders fans are a lot higher on. So at least for me, I definitely side on giving a lot more leeway to O'Connell because of the fact that I don't necessarily think you need to test Minshew as much. But what do you think?
I would go against you just to say, in terms of just strictly, like I agree with you in terms of obviously you're right. We know who Minshew is at this point, whereas O'Connell is a little bit more of an unknown commodity and it has a little bit more promise. In terms of who's winning this battle straight out of camp, though, I think it has to be Minshew. They
Yes.
gave him like an amount of money to come to them, where it's not just like backup money. They
And
gave him like fringe
And
starter
just to
money,
throw it in there as well,
and
I'm not necessarily saying that I think O'Connell's the better quarterback out of the two, because I want to say that I absolutely think it is Minshew. But I'm just talking about in what you gotta hope happens, I guess, more than anything.
no, that's true, and I concede that. I just think I don't necessarily know if he's going to be given that chance. Gardner Minshew um, is on a 2-year, $25 million contract with the Raiders, which is not insignificant. Like that's a decent chunk of change. Um, I think that kind of shows what they think about him. And he had a good season for the Colts. Like it was
Yes, he did.
impressive what he was able to do. Richardson only played like the first 3 or 4 games before he got hurt. So
Something like that.
Minshew was like the driving force between the Colts almost making it to the playoffs. All this hype around the Texans, but if the Colts win that close game at the end of the year, where it's there was a while ago, but I believe it was the fact that it was a dropped pass. Like it was not Minshew's fault that
Yeah.
the Colts missed the playoffs. It was a drop pass on a fourth and whatever, and that's the difference between the Colts making it to the playoffs over the Texans, who are the belle of the ball right now. Um, I think that Minshew. I think this has always been the thing with Minshew. He does have a lot of talent. Um, it's just it is kind of like he is a bit of a gambler. Like he's gonna make some big mistakes. He's gonna break you as much as he pushes the team forward. Um, but I do think just to make a kind of interesting connection here. I think this is the exact situation that the Falcons don't by picking Michael Penix didn't want to be in. The rest of the Raiders roster is pretty ready, especially on offense. Not as much on defense, especially on offense, where
Still have pieces
you've
on
got
defense.
like you have Devonte Adams, you have now Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. Like you've got a decent O line. Like the pieces are there ish, but they don't have the main guy to make it go. And
Yeah.
that's why the Falcons are like, we don't ever want to be in that situation because they don't think the Raiders will ever be bad enough to be picking in the top 5 to draft a quarterback like this. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that so I think my point being I think Minshew and O'Connell should be bridge guys. I don't know necessarily where you go from there. Like they are in a bit of limbo in that sense.
Yeah. And that's where I just repeat the same thing, where it's like it just comes down to like who you think has the potential to not be a bridge guy for you, right? Because I agree with you. I think Minshew's ceiling is being that bridge starter, and I don't necessarily disagree in the fact that O'Connell is also that. I just think out of the two, to potentially become that next level starter for you for the next 10 years, O'Connell definitely has the potential more than Minshew. I think Minshew can fill in. I think he can fill in very, very well, and I think you can be a starter for a team like the Raiders or like those types of teams. He is your like I think he's a journeyman in a sense is kind of what I kind of would compare Minshew to a little bit. I think he is a very highly skilled high top of like the market journeyman, right? And I don't think that the Raiders will be his last stop.
Yeah. And I mean that has been his career, right? Jacksonville to Philly to Indianapolis to now the Raiders. But I think that's kind of O'Connell's ceiling generally too. We don't know what he's going to be, but it's just bad team building. I think to hitch your wagons on a fourth round pick, and this isn't like a guy like Dak Prescott who just came out guns blazing. He was just pretty good. He was better than Jimmy G, but he was pretty good. But if you want to take that next step, like it's not he I don't think he's that guy
Yeah.
for you. Um, yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see how this team does next year. I just think they are in a bit of a tricky scenario with how the draft played out this year, with how the next year's quarterback draft is looking not necessarily that great, and with how I think they have a decent enough team around them to not be in contention for that top 5 pick. I just think it's just a really rough situation where I think you have to be looking for I don't know if it is maybe like already brought him up, but if you're looking for a Dak Prescott or somebody in free agency, that may be their only move. Um, yeah, I just think they're in a bit of a limbo here, and it's
Yeah.
kind of a frustrating situation for Raiders fans.
stuck in mediocrity is what it is, right? Where like this is probably the best like team outside of the quarterback position you'll probably have in the next 3 years, but there's a good chance that this will be the worst quarterback you'll have over the next 3 years if you want to look at it like that. So it's an interesting spot to be in. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Who knows? I think the lowest odds thing that could potentially happen is Minshew turning into that next big starter. But because I love Minshew and I think he's a
Smith arc, right?
Exactly. I was gonna say it would be I would be all
The
for
same
Minshew
thing with Baker
doing that.
Mayfield.
Yep. Oh, there you go. Right.
It's the same thing with Baker Mayfield, and that's maybe where we, like I said at the start, it's maybe where we look back on this and say like, oh my God, how did we not see this? Minshew had a really good season last year with the Colts, and he just got even better.
Oh yeah.
Throwing to
There you
Devontae
go.
Adams.
Or maybe Aiden O'Connell is your Kyle Trask.
Who knows?
Yeah. There you go. Who knows? We'll
People
just have to see.
Talk.
People love the Trask Talk. We should rename the podcast Trask Talk. We should. I wonder if we could get Kyle Trask on the podcast. Maybe that's something we gotta try.
That feels like an achievable goal generally. Like,
what's Kyle?
Like
Trask
we're not
do?
shooting for the moon. We're shooting for Kyle Trask.
We're shooting. Oh God. We just gotta hope he doesn't hear that before he comes on.
I mean, Kyle Trask is the bar. This is the bar of excellence.
Oh, we're looking in our.
There is no higher. There's no higher ceiling than.
I have said to you before that I think we should start bringing on more guests, or we should make an effort to. I've
start.
There maybe there you go. I will say that I was the one saying that, and I have not made any effort. So there is also that fact, but yeah.
Should have had Ryan on for the Leaf segment.
Yes, we should have. That would have been a terrific idea. Oops. Yeah, that and also
Ryan, if you're watching this, Ryan is a constant trick play watcher. He watches from time to time. I don't think he'd be watching deep into the Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell segment, but if you're watching, Ryan, we got to get you on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We should get Ryan on at some point here, even just to talk about the Leafs later on. And also we can bother him about when you're taking a swim in the ocean. Both of those things are very, very important conversations to have.
Right.